origin, the same rulers who commanded vast empires, led armies into battle, and changed the course of the world. Their descendants could be walking the streets today, living ordinary lives. From the mighty Genghis Khan to the ambitious Napoleon, from ancient pharaohs to medieval monarchs, their bloodlines have survived against all odds. Today, we uncover the truth about the legendary rulers whose legacy is not just history, but living reality. History is full of conquerors, kings, and emperors whose names have echoed across centuries. We read about them in books, we watch them in films, and we imagine their grandeur as if they belong only to the past. But the truth is far more intriguing. The stories of these rulers did not end with their death or the fall of their empires. Their bloodlines, the very essence of their legacy, often survived, quietly continuing through generations. These are what we call the eternal bloodlines. Human beings have always been fascinated by ancestry. The idea of being connected to a great figure from the past sparks a sense of wonder, pride, and mystery. When we hear that someone alive today might be related to a king, an emperor, or even a conqueror, we cannot help but imagine, do they carry the same strength, the same brilliance, the same destiny that once defined their ancestor? Bloodlines are not just biological connections, they are threads that tie us to the legacies of those who once ruled the world. What makes these eternal bloodlines even more fascinating is their ability to outlast the collapse of entire kingdoms. Cities may be burned to the ground, thrones may be taken away, and dynasties may fall into obscurity. But as long as the lineage continues, a part of that empire still lives on. This is why, even in modern society, people take pride in tracing their ancestry back to noble or royal families. It is more than a family tree. It is a living link to history. Modern science and genetics have made this idea even more compelling. Studies of DNA have revealed surprising truths, that the blood of certain rulers still flows through millions of people alive today. For instance, the case of Genghis Khan demonstrates how one man's lineage could spread across continents, leaving millions of descendants centuries later. Likewise, in Europe, many royal families can still trace their ancestry back to medieval emperors and monarchs. What is most astonishing, however, is that many descendants of legendary rulers are not kings or queens today. They are ordinary people. Imagine a teacher in a small town, a clerk in an office, or a farmer in the countryside, who might unknowingly carry the blood of a ruler who once commanded armies and reshaped nations. The crown and throne may be gone, but the legacy remains alive within their veins. This is the timeless allure of eternal bloodlines. History does not simply fade into the past. It lingers, it survives, and it often lives among us in ways we least expect. The kings and emperors may have died, but their descendants carry forward their legacy, sometimes in plain sight, sometimes hidden in the shadows. In the coming chapters, we will journey into the stories of these rulers, from conquerors who sought the world, to dynasties that refuse to die, and discover how their bloodlines still live among us today. Few names in history shine as brightly as Alexander the Great. Born in 356 BC in Macedonia, he rose to power at a young age, and by the age of 30, had created one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. His armies conquered lands stretching from Greece to Egypt and as far as India. Alexander was not just a military genius, he was a visionary who sought to unite cultures and spread Greek influence across continents. But when it comes to his descendants, the story takes a mysterious turn. Alexander died young, at just 32 years old in Babylon. His death was sudden and unexpected, leaving his empire without a strong successor. History tells us that Alexander had one son, Alexander IV, born to his wife Roxana shortly after his death. For a brief moment, it seemed that his bloodline would continue. Yet the political chaos that followed Alexander's death was brutal. His generals, known as the Diadochi, fought viciously to carve out their own territories. Amid the struggle, young Alexander IV and his mother were eventually executed. Officially, The direct bloodline of Alexander the Great ended there. But history is never so simple. Some historians and genealogists argue that Alexander may have had other children, illegitimate sons or daughters born during his conquests. As a conqueror who married into multiple cultures and whose soldiers often mingled with local populations, the possibility of hidden bloodlines cannot be dismissed. There are whispers in ancient sources about other heirs, though none were officially recognized. Adding to the mystery, some royal families in Central Asia and even parts of Persia have claimed descent from Alexander. These claims are difficult to prove with absolute certainty, yet they persist. The very idea of being linked to one of the greatest conquerors in history carries immense power. So, such claims have often been repeated through generations. Modern genetic studies have tried to shed light on this question, but without a confirmed DNA sample from Alexander, it remains speculative. What we do know, however, is that Alexander's legacy went far beyond blood. Through his conquests, he left behind cities, culture, and traditions that shaped civilizations for centuries. His name became legendary, and his image was celebrated as almost divine. In that sense, Alexander's descendants are not only those who may share his blood, but also the countless generations influenced by his vision of a united world. So, did Alexander the Great leave behind living descendants? History suggests his official bloodline ended tragically with his young son. But myths, legends, and family claims across Asia and the Middle East hint at possibilities that may never be fully disproven. The truth may be hidden in the shadows of time, but the fascination with his potential heirs endures. Because to be a descendant of Alexander would mean carrying the blood of a man who sought to conquer the entire known world. When it comes to legendary rulers whose bloodline still thrives today, no one compares to Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongol Empire. Born in 1162 on the harsh steppes of Mongolia, he rose from poverty and exile to unite the Mongol tribes under his leadership. With unmatched strategy, discipline, and brutality, he created the largest contiguous empire in history, stretching from China to Europe. But Genghis Khan's legacy was not just military, it was biological. His descendants are believed to number in the millions. Unlike Alexander the Great, whose bloodline seems to have vanished, Genghis Khan deliberately ensured his lineage would endure. He had multiple wives and concubines throughout his life. According to historical records, his principal wife Berta bore him 4 sons who became key figures in continuing the Mongol Empire. Beyond that, Genghis Khan fathered children with women from conquered lands as part of both political alliances and personal dominance. For him, expanding his bloodline was as much a strategy of empire as expanding his borders. In 2003, a groundbreaking genetic study revealed just how vast his legacy might be. Researchers discovered that nearly 8% of men in regions once ruled by the Mongol Empire, roughly 16 million men worldwide, carry a particular Y chromosome pattern traced back to a common ancestor who lived about 1,000 years ago in Mongolia. While science cannot directly name Genghis Khan as the source, the evidence strongly suggests that he is the most likely origin of this genetic legacy. What makes this extraordinary is the scale. No other historical figure has left such a vast biological footprint. While many kings and rulers struggled to keep a single heir alive, Genghis Khan's descendants spread across Asia, the Middle East, and even into parts of Europe. Dynasties such as the Yuan rulers of China and the Ilkhanate in Persia were directly descended from him, and even centuries later, noble families in Central Asia proudly traced their bloodline to the Great Khan. But what about today? Many modern Mongols still claim descent from Genghis Khan, and in countries once under Mongol rule, being associated with his bloodline is considered a badge of honor. Some historians note that even if only a fraction of these claims are accurate, the number of his true descendants would still be immense. Unlike most rulers, who often had fragile bloodlines easily broken by politics or assassinations, Genghis Khan's strategy ensured his lineage would endure for centuries. Yet, his legacy is not just in numbers. His descendants continue to shape history for generations. From Kublai Khan, who founded China's Yuan dynasty, to rulers in Central Asia and beyond, the blood of Genghis Khan shaped empires long after his death. And even today, ordinary people across the world unknowingly carry his DNA. A living reminder of a man whose ambition, cruelty, and vision changed the world forever. In short, Genghis Khan is not just a figure of history. He is, quite literally, part of humanity's living bloodline. For more than 3,000 years, the pharaohs of Egypt ruled as god-kings, commanding not only armies and kingdoms, but also the spiritual devotion of their people. From the Old Kingdom pyramids to the golden age of the New Kingdom, these rulers were believed to be divine, their blood sacred and eternal. But a question still lingers. After centuries of dynasties, invasions and collapse, do the pharaohs of Egypt have living descendants today? Unlike some monarchies, Egypt's royal lineage was complex. Pharaohs often married within their families to preserve divine bloodlines, leading to generations of tightly guarded dynasties. Some of the most famous names in history, Tutankhamun, Ramses the Great, Cleopatra, were part of these sacred bloodlines. Yet history was cruel. Dynasties often ended abruptly due to assassinations, civil wars, or foreign conquests. By the time of Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, the line of rulers directly descended from the old dynasties was already fading. Cleopatra's union with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony produced children, but their fates were tragic. Most were killed or absorbed into Roman society, their Egyptian heritage lost to time. Still, not all hope of pharaonic descendants vanished. Some historians believe that branches of Egypt's royal families survived quietly, merging with noble families in North Africa and the Middle East. For example, certain Coptic Christian families in Egypt have long claimed descent from the pharaohs, preserving oral traditions that link them back to ancient rulers. Likewise, Arab historians from the medieval era mention surviving noble Egyptian families who trace their blood to the last dynasties of the Nile. The most intriguing claims, however, revolve around modern science. The discovery of DNA evidence from royal mummies, including Tutankhamun, has given researchers new tools to trace genetic links. Studies show connections between the pharaohs and broader populations of the Middle East and North Africa. While this does not mean we can point to a single person and say, "Here is a living pharaoh," it suggests that fragments of those ancient bloodlines live on in ordinary people today. Equally fascinating is the symbolic legacy. Even though Egypt no longer has kings, many families in the region continue to carry names, traditions, and pride associated with royal ancestry. In fact, during the 20th century, Egypt was briefly ruled by the Muhammad Ali dynasty, a royal family of Albanian origin, which claimed descent from noble bloodlines tied to the region's ancient past. Though not direct descendants of the pharaohs, their reign revived interest in Egypt's lost royal legacy. So, do the pharaohs still have heirs among us? The answer is complicated. Direct, traceable royal lines may have broken with Cleopatra and the Roman conquest. But through centuries of hidden unions, migrations, and cultural blending, pieces of their DNA may live on in countless individuals across Egypt and beyond. While the names of Ramses and Tutankhamun may remain locked in tombs, the possibility that their blood still flows in living people keeps the fascination alive. In this way, the pharaohs may be gone, but their story is not over. Their descendants may still walk among us unseen, carrying the memory of kings who were once gods. Few rulers in history have shaped Europe as profoundly as Charlemagne, also known as Charles the Great. Crowned Emperor of the Romans in the year 800, he is often called the Father of Europe. His empire united much of Western and Central Europe, laying the foundation for nations that still exist today: France, Germany, and parts of Italy. But Charlemagne's influence was not only political, it was also biological. Many of Europe's royal families proudly trace their bloodlines back to him. making him one of the most significant ancestors in Western history. Charlemagne had an astonishingly large family. Historical records suggest he fathered at least 18 children with multiple wives and concubines. Unlike some rulers who left fragile dynasties vulnerable to collapse, Charlemagne ensured his bloodline spread far and wide. His children married into noble families across Europe, weaving his lineage into the very fabric of European aristocracy. Over time, this created a vast web of descendants who continued to rule kingdoms and empires for centuries. One of the clearest examples of Charlemagne's legacy is seen in the Holy Roman Empire. His descendants carried on his imperial vision, with rulers across Central Europe claiming legitimacy through their connection to him. Later, during the medieval era, dynasties in France, Germany, Spain, and even Eastern Europe proudly emphasized their ties to Charlemagne as a mark of divine right and political power. Today, genealogists argue that Charlemagne may be the ancestor of nearly every modern European of Western descent. This is due to the mathematical reality of ancestry. Going back over 40 generations, the lines of descent multiply and intertwine. Since Charlemagne lived more than 200 years ago and had so many descendants, it is statistically almost impossible for anyone with European ancestry not to be connected to him in some way. In fact, genetic studies support the idea that millions of people alive today, perhaps even you, could be descended from Charlemagne. But what about Europe's current royal families? The answer is even more striking. Kings and queens across the continent, from the British royal family to the monarchies of Spain, Belgium, and Luxembourg, all trace their bloodlines directly back to Charlemagne. His descendants have sat on thrones for over a millennium, shaping the politics, wars, and cultures of Europe. Even the most recent coronations in Europe are, in a sense, echoes of his legacy. Charlemagne's influence goes beyond bloodlines. He was a patron of education, law, and Christianity, sparking what historians call the Carolingian Renaissance. Through his descendants, his legacy was passed down not just in name, but in the shaping of European identity itself. In this way, Charlemagne's story is unique. Unlike rulers whose bloodlines have disappeared or become obscure, his descendants are everywhere, in palaces, in history books, and even in ordinary families who may never realize they carry the blood of a king. Charlemagne is not just a figure of the past. His living descendants make him one of the most enduring rulers in human history. When people hear the name Vlad the Impaler, they often think of blood, terror, and the infamous vampire legend of Dracula. Vlad III of Wallachia, born in the 15th century, earned his fearsome title by brutally punishing his enemies, often by impalement, a method so shocking it cemented his reputation in history. But behind the myth of Dracula lies a real ruler with a complicated legacy. And astonishingly, his bloodline has not disappeared. In fact, some of Europe's most respected royal families claim descent from him. Vlad the Impaler came from the House of Draculești, a noble family in Wallachia, a region of modern-day Romania. He was the son of Vlad II Dracul, a member of the Order of the Dragon, a knightly group dedicated to defending Christianity. While Vlad's reign was marked by brutality, he was also a skilled strategist who defended his homeland against the powerful Ottoman Empire. In Romanian history, he is remembered not only as a tyrant, but also as a defender of independence. But what about his descendants? Historical records show that Vlad the Impaler had children, though details about their lives are scarce. Some branches of his family intermarried with other noble houses in Eastern Europe. Over time, his bloodline spread quietly into aristocratic families across the region. One of the most surprising connections is to the British royal family. Genealogical studies suggest that King Charles III, and previously Queen Elizabeth II, are distant descendants of Vlad the Impaler through their connection to the House of Windsor's ties with German and Eastern European nobility. This means that the ruler who inspired the legend of Dracula has living descendants seated on one of the most famous thrones in the world. The idea of Dracula's bloodline surviving in modern monarchs has fascinated both historians and the public. In fact, Romania itself has embraced this unusual heritage. Members of the British royal family have visited Transylvania, highlighting their ancestral ties. King Charles has even spoken of his affection for the Romanian countryside, calling it a second home, a poetic return of sorts to the land of his ancestor. Beyond the British royals, Vlad's lineage also appears in noble families scattered across Eastern Europe. His bloodline, once feared and shrouded in horror, now forms part of the tapestry of European aristocracy. It is a striking example of how even the darkest rulers can leave legacies that survive in unexpected ways. Vlad, the Impaler's descendants remind us that history's monsters are often more complex than their myths. While his cruelty is undeniable, his story is also one of resistance, survival, and heritage. And for modern royals who carry his blood, it is a connection to a past that blends both terror and legend. So next time you hear the word Dracula, remember this: he was not just a creature of fiction, he was a man, a prince, and a ruler whose blood still flows through the veins of kings and queens today. His legacy, like his legend, is immortal. Few rulers in world history left a legacy as vast and enduring as Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongol Empire. Rising from humble beginnings in the harsh steppes of Mongolia in the 12th century, he built the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen. His conquests stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, reshaping entire civilizations. But beyond his military genius and empire building, Genghis Khan is also remembered for another staggering legacy: his descendants. It is widely believed that Genghis Khan fathered numerous children during his lifetime. Through marriages, alliances, and conquest, his bloodline spread rapidly across Asia and beyond. Historical accounts suggest he had many wives and concubines, and his descendants became rulers, generals, and nobles throughout the Mongol Empire and the regions it controlled. The impact of this massive lineage is still felt today. In 2003, a groundbreaking genetic study shocked the world. Researchers discovered that approximately 16 million men alive today, about 1 in every 200 males, carry a Y chromosome that can be traced back to Genghis Khan. This genetic footprint is one of the largest ever attributed to a single individual, making Genghis Khan arguably the most prolific patriarch in human history. His descendants didn't just fade into obscurity. For centuries after his death, they ruled vast territories across Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. The Yuan dynasty in China, founded by his grandson Kublai Khan, became one of the most powerful dynasties in Chinese history. Other branches of his family continued to reign over Persia, Central Asia, and parts of Russia. Even after the Mongol Empire fractured, rulers proudly proclaimed their descent from Genghis Khan as a way to legitimize their power. To this day, noble families in Mongolia and Central Asia trace their ancestry back to him. In fact, in Mongolia, the title of Borjigin, Genghis Khan's clan, still carries immense prestige, but his legacy extends beyond royals and nobles. Thanks to his vast number of descendants, millions of ordinary people across Asia and beyond may unknowingly carry his DNA. From modern-day Mongolia to Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and even parts of Eastern Europe, traces of Genghis Khan's bloodline run through countless families. This incredible spread of his lineage raises questions about the meaning of legacy. While most rulers are remembered through monuments, books, or dynasties, Genghis Khan is remembered through living people. His DNA is one of the most enduring marks ever left by a single human being. Yet, his story is not just about biology. Genghis Khan also reshaped cultures, laws, and trade. He established the Yasa, a unified code of law, and promoted the Silk Road, which connected East and West in ways that changed the world forever. His descendants carried on these traditions, ensuring that his influence stretched far beyond his lifetime. Genghis Khan's legacy is staggering. He was not only the conqueror of nations, but also the ancestor of millions. His empire may have collapsed, but his bloodline thrives. In a sense, Genghis Khan still rules the world, not through armies, but through the sheer number of people who carry a part of him within their very DNA.